Hey, it's me, your boy Blue Gatsuga, and today I'll be doing a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tier analysis on Cyber Dragons and Armed Dragons. Why? Because they're both GX decks, and someone actually requested Cyber Dragons, Armed Dragons. And next I'll be doing Wind Witch and Evil Twins, because again, people requested them. Let's get started. Cyber Dragons are a fusion archetype from GX, like I stated, and it focuses on fusion summoning and beating, basically OTKing your opponent. For the pros, Master Rule 5. So you could basically special summon multiple you can summon multiple extract monsters, you can summon your infinity, or actually summon your big fusion monsters using Power Bond and other fusion spells. But most of the time, you're going to be focusing on getting out your Link monster and Infinity and applying pressure. Or you can actually just, search your Kaiju and then, OTK with your Cyber Dragons. Which is which it's pretty easy to OTK in this deck, but let's move on. Also, I like how I mentioned all that just from this one. Anyways, this deck has great boss monsters in the form of Infinity and your Link monster. Also, the fusion monsters in this archetype are pretty cool as well. This deck has lots of good spells and traps. I don't think they have a terrible I don't think they have a terrible spell slash trap. Almost all of them, to my recollection, are pretty good, including the slow ones. This deck has good search power because there's like what 3 to 4 different searchers in this deck. This deck can easily OTK, and this deck is also pretty versatile since you can also just go. It's not a glass cannon OTK deck like most OTK decks are. This deck can set up negates. This deck can also do things like fusion summon using your opponent's monsters, whether they're using machine monsters, so you can go into Chimera attack, or they summon an extract monster in the extra monster zone, so you could just fusion summon off with it, so you could go into your Chimera Tech Fleet Dragon. This deck also, yeah, I think there's an extract monster that actually pops spells and traps, as well as an extract monster that helps boost your Cyber Dragon's attacks. Yeah, which is the Link monster. The one that pops is a fusion monster. And you could also use it to send machine cards from your deck to your graveyard, which is also pretty nice. Now for the cons. This deck is mostly good going second. Yes, you can go first and summon that Infinity and back it up with the Link monster, assuming you can, but it takes a lot of resources, plus a board like that is pretty easy to break in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And the second one, this deck usually can't play through more than 2 disruptions. Other than that, there aren't really many cons I can actually think of with this deck. For power, I give it a 4.5 out of 5 since this deck can easily OTK and they could also get their attack points up to really high numbers. For defense, I'd give it a 2.5 out of 5 because their in archetype Monster Reborn is pretty powerful and provides protection, as well as Infinity provides extra protection, as well as your Link monster. As for recovery, I give this deck a 2.5 out of 5 because this deck has a lot of search power and it's really easy to actually combo off with this deck. So you can easily top deck something that can actually save you at least half the time, which is why I give it a 2.5 out of 5. Exactly half of 5. For versatility, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Like I mentioned when, talking about versatility. And for consistency, I'd give this deck a 4 out of 5, since this deck does have a lot of search power and it's fairly consistent with what it can do. So I'd give this deck a tier 2.5. Why? Because this deck is fairly competitive. I mean, it's not meta competitive, but people play this deck and it's pretty powerful and it can actually get around I would basically call this deck like a sleeper deck. So I would give this, which is why I say it's a 2.5. Next, we have Armed Dragons. Armed Dragons are a GX archetype, and they sucked. Keyword, they sucked. But their new support actually makes them way more playable and way more fun to play. Oh yeah, like I should also mention the whole level mechanic. With the level mechanic is a very slow and old mechanic in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you have to wait turns, at least standby phases, before you can actually special summon like the upgraded version of said level monster from your deck. After I forgot the word, but after meeting certain requirements to actually do so. But as you would imagine, that was incredibly slow and painful to actually get off. And because of that, I never thought we'd actually get any Armed Dragon support, but here we are. For the pros, this this deck has good boss monsters. Because your Armed Dragon level 10 Thunder plus your Armed Dragon level 10 White, they're pretty decent. I mean, White is decent. Level 10 Thunder is pretty good. This deck has good spells and traps. Like I think all of their spells and traps are pretty good, including the old Armed Dragon spell traps, which was probably just one. This this deck has good destruction effects. If you didn't know, a lot of the higher level Armed Dragons they specialize in destroying cards based off of discards. And that's something even the old Armed Dragons have, but the new ones do the same things, but arguably better. This deck can OTK under the right circumstances. Yeah, sometimes it requires setup, but the setup isn't all that crazy to actually, get off. And this deck is consistent because this deck has a lot of ways to actually replenish your resources after you burn through them to summon your high level monsters. Speaking of, I don't think I've mentioned how they level up in this deck. In this deck, you don't level up the way level monsters typically do. You have to tribute the monster you're leveling up with as well as discard a card in the hand, but all of the new Armed Dragon Thunder monsters have effects that allow them to actually gain resources whenever you use them. The level 3 allows you to draw a card, the level 5 allows you to add, I think, a Thunder Dragon, like an Armed Dragon Thunder monster from your deck to your hand. Level 7 allows you to add a spell card, I think. No, I think the level 5 allows you to dump one into the graveyard, and the level 7 allows you to add an Armed Dragon Thunder card or Armed Dragon card in general. And the level 10 doesn't really do anything when it hits the graveyard, but on the field is pretty beastly. And for the cons, this deck isn't all that versatile. It's still pretty one note. Usually you're just going to try to pop cards with the Armed Dragon effects or just try to run over your opponent's monsters with your big dragons. And that's just about it. This deck lacks good protection. Yeah, the level 10 has decent protection against battle, but that's about it. As well as one of your Armed Dragon spell traps protecting you from card effects. Not from battle and card effects, just protects you from being destroyed by card effects, which is it's all right, I guess, but it's not all that great in Armed Dragon since there's many ways you can easily get around an Armed Dragon board, especially if they fail to end you. And lastly, usually can't play through more than one disruption. Because this deck is still pretty frail, and if your opponent doesn't OTK you, it's kind of over for them. Power wise, I give this deck a 4 out of 5 because their monsters can get to really great heights, and their destruction effects are pretty nice. For defense, I give it a 2 out of 5 because the defense is somewhat lacking, but they do have some defense. It's just not all that great. For recovery, I give this deck a 2.5 out of 5 because you can easily recur your resources. You can recur your resources fairly easily. For versatility, I give it a 1.5 out of 5 for reasons I already mentioned, and for consistency, I'd give this deck a 3 out of 5. Since yes, this deck can brick a fair amount of times, but if you build this deck properly, which you most likely will, you can easily open up your combos. And when testing this deck again, I didn't brick as much as I did when I did the Arm Dragon duels, like about a month ago. I think 2 months ago. Anyways, because of that, I would say that this deck is a tier 3 deck. I don't think this deck is horrible. Yes, it's a glass cannon, and yes, it's kind of one note, but this deck does what it does really well. This deck likes to smash things and it likes to pop things. And I feel like that is good enough, kinda. Okay, that's kind of a lie. I'm just gonna say it's good enough for what it is right now. Later, I hope that they get some support that actually allows them to achieve their win condition a lot easier. But I think the deck is a fun deck and it's decent. Anyways, tell me what you guys think about Armed Dragons in the comments below. And it's been me, your boy Blue Getsuga, and I'm out.